It began like any other night on The Daily Show, but no one anticipated what happened when Jon Stewart returned to his desk with his trademark smirk, glanced at the camera nonchalantly, and then made a joke so scathing and well-targeted that it divided the internet in two. He paused for impact, and then Meghan Markle is basically a mini Brigitte great at slapping her man into place. The audience shouted, and suddenly the atmosphere around Meghan Markle altered once more.
It doesn't have to be this way. Hey, girl. Down on your luck. You get a podcast, you can still terrorize people. And no, I do not want to be on.
Now, for those who are unaware, Brigitte Macron is the First Lady of France, decades older than her husband Emmanuel Macron, and is often portrayed in the European media as being excessively domineering or outspoken. There is a famous video of her snatching the president's hand away at a diplomatic gathering, a split-second gesture that made headlines. When Jon Stewart decided to take aim at Meghan Markle, it felt different because he wasn't just making petty jokes or internet rumors. Instead, he was making a statement, and people heard it. The reaction was immediate, and within minutes, Meghan standing next to Brigitte with the caption "Boss Babes" or "Bossy Babes" appeared on Twitter, or whatever we're calling it now. He didn't just make it in passing. He built the entire segment around it, creating a vicious comedic bit that poked at every crack in Meghan's polished image. You might sense the change for years after seeing Prince Harry clumsily attempt to touch Meghan's hand as she waves him away like a bodyguard in the Macron film. According to tales that followed, Meghan had succeeded in maintaining this delicate balance between victimization and empowerment between royalty and rebels. Stewart's joke, however, upended the entire system. Meghan was absolutely livid behind closed doors. The Sussex team was scrambling. She apparently viewed the segment as not just mean-spirited but sexist, outdated, and deeply unfair. But here's the thing, most people didn't see it that way. They saw a well-crafted bit of satire finally saying what a lot of folks had been whispering for a while, that maybe Meghan's whole empowerment persona feels off, and that podcast didn't help. Confessions of a female founder, the project that was supposed to showcase Meghan's intellect and insight, ended up being Exhibit A in what critics call her brand's decline. The show was all gloss and zero grit, soft questions, vague affirmations, and a whole lot of thank you for asking without actually answering anything. Stewart, with his usual bite, tore it apart. He joked it was less about female founders and more about a foundering female. The crowd howled, and somewhere in Montecito, a PR assistant probably quit on the spot. The issue here isn't just the joke, it's the timing. Meghan's image has been taking slow hits for months, unfulfilled deals, awkward interviews, and that strange sense that something just isn't landing the way it used to. She was once hailed as the fresh-faced outsider taking on the dusty old monarchy, but now the narrative's slipping, and Stewart didn't just call attention to that slip, he shoved it under a spotlight. The fact that Stewart isn't Megyn Kelly or Piers Morgan is what makes this sting even more. He is a liberal legend who is adored by the same demographic that Meghan's team has been working so hard to court: feminist progressives and creatives, and they are now laughing at him. He is not a part of the conservative outrage machine. More than just a sentence, the joke about Meghan shoving her husband into place was a cultural gut punch that suggested dominance, control, and emasculation, whether or not that is accurate. The fact that it resonated so strongly speaks to how people currently view the Sussexes. Prince Harry, who was once the cool royal rebel, is now portrayed as the man who follows his wife around on red carpet events while carrying her purse and nodding. Somewhere along the way, the narrative flipped what was once perceived as noble rebellion, making it feel more like curated chaos in a media landscape that is fixated on authenticity. Meghan's meticulously manicured photo is beginning to seem less motivating and more draining. That's what made Stewart's joke so risky. It wasn't crazy or conspiratorial or even mean-spirited. Rather, it was simply well-received, which is much worse because it meant he was capitalizing on a reality that people already sensed about Meghan Markle's public persona. This portrayal of compassion, strength, and leadership may be a bit too manufactured. And in America, when satire strikes a chord, it frequently marks a transition in media and culture, the way a public person goes from iconic to satirical. You can be the voice of change one moment and the punchline the next. Meghan's team will probably try to spin this there might be a new appearance statement, maybe even a fresh cause. But the damage has been done. People aren't just questioning her, they are laughing at her. And in the age of memes and instant reaction, that's not something you can PR your way out of. The sting wasn't just in the punchline, it was in how perfectly it captured everything people had been citing for years. Meghan's brand had always thrived on control. Every statement, every appearance, every project had layers of polish, from the carefully posed family photos to the organic moments and interviews that somehow still felt like rehearsed monologues. It all screamed strategy. But the more you try to control perception, the faster people start looking for cracks. And Stewart didn't just find the cracks, he pried them open with a crowbar of comedy. He zeroed in on confessions of a female founder. And let's be honest, that podcast didn't exactly help her case. Marketed as a celebration of female entrepreneurship, it landed more like an overpriced TED Talk. Trapped in a Whole Foods aisle, every episode followed the same script: a soft-spoken intro, lots of affirmations, and a bizarre refusal to get real. At no point did the show dig into the ugly, unfiltered grind that real founders go through. No financial risks, no breakdowns, no hard-earned wins. Critics of alignment and vision were not being harsh when they stated it felt phony. Rather, they were being truthful. Meghan had never truly established a business. There were no problems with payroll, employment, or product releases. The only thing she had ever truly founded was a media brand tied to her royal title, and even that wasn't holding up too well. Deals were falling through, traction was eroding, and even her Netflix animation project Pearl was quietly canceled before it could cause a single ripple. Therefore, when Stewart joked that the show was more about someone foundering than about founders, it hit harder than it should have, because it was accurate and called out what everyone was thinking, that Meghan's version of struggle was so sanitized that it felt like a parody of genuine ambition. When the joke was delivered, there was not a single gasp from the audience, just laughter. That's the worst kind of rejection, not outrage, indifference. Prince Harry wasn't amenable to Stewart's jab at him either. An unemployed immigrant who gave up his house for his family now attends charity meals with his wife's purse. Wasn't only harsh, it was shocking. It shatters the image of a royal rebel that Harry had attempted to establish since leaving the monarchy. The memoir, the tell-all interviews, an incessant focus on finding his voice all conflicted with the portrayal of Stewart as a man in the background of his own story. And let's face it, that's what people are beginning to see at public gatherings. Harry hardly ever talks anymore, so Meghan takes the lead and makes the emotional pleas. Harry is standing next to her, grinning like a security guard in a tuxedo. This may sound harsh, but appearances count, especially when your brand depends on visibility. If people start to see you as a prop in your partner's journey, the sympathy quickly fades. The irony is that Meghan and Harry built their post-royal brand on being genuine, saying they left the palace because it was stifling, because it prevented them from being authentic. However, outside the palace walls, their new lives began to look just as staged, from the well-timed paparazzi walks to the private home footage in their Netflix documentary series. Nothing felt natural anymore, and when authenticity starts to feel curated, it turns into comedy fodder. Stewart didn't invent the Meghan backlash, he just accelerated it. Until then, criticism of the Sussexes mostly lived in conservative circles, tabloid columns, or angry YouTube rants. But this was something else. This was a respected comedian, someone known for his progressive values, saying out loud that the emperor wasn't wearing clothes, and the audience clapped. That's not just a PR problem, that's a cultural shift. It wasn't about her being a woman, or being biracial, or being an outsider. That's the argument her defenders usually reach for, but Stewart's joke wasn't punching down, it was punching through the branding, through the scripted vulnerability, through the endless cycle of polished victimhood. He wasn't mocking her identity, he was mocking the way she used it as armor. The laughter in that studio wasn't cruel, it was tired of being told to admire someone who always seemed just out of reach, tired of being sold empowerment without substance, tired of seeing authenticity packaged like luxury skin. The punchline landed not because people hate Meghan, but because they no longer feel like they know who she really is. And here's the truth that makes this even messier, Jon. The quiet part that no one wants to say aloud is that perhaps the tide is turned not because people despise Meghan, but rather because they have stopped purchasing her products. Stewart is the type of comedian who picks his targets carefully. He doesn't chase influence or follow fads. If he chose to take that shot, It indicates that he believed the public was ready to hear it. Storytelling has always been central to Meghan's brand.